I work with a lot of, earlier stage brands. You mentioned you kind of don't get interested until like, 5 million level. A lot of my clients are, somewhat below that. And they're not yet at the point where they have full or dedicated sales, marketing, operations people. Obviously, they have me, so they have some type of finance support. But it's very common that the founder will be wearing multiple of those hats, right? Now, founders, love them to bits, but one of the good and also terrible things about founders is that they tend to be very optimistic, and they usually have this over optimism bias, right? They like to focus on how wonderful things are going to go and how much they're going to sell and how much they're going to scale and blah, 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 blah. I'm wondering if you have any tips or advice for founders who are in situations where they themselves are actually wearing multiple of these hats, right? They are the salesperson, they are the marketing person, and they also have operations oversight. Is there certain ways that you could kind of manage the meeting that you referenced before, or at least get the benefits of that meeting when it's the founder who's actually wearing, more than one of those hats?
Yeah, so most of my brands is the same thing. The founder
Hmm.
is the main person. I treat them like if they were, because most founders, and I learned this from my M&A days, is whenever we would buy a company, usually the founder became
Hmm.
head of sales. Right. They made it. So I
Okay.
always just kind of look the founder as the head of sales. And so I treat them like that. A lot of it really is them never really, and this goes back to the mind your business. They've never really dug into their business. They've always been that person out
Mm.
there just like selling, selling, selling. And they've never really dug into like, what are the SKUs that are moving? What are the profit margins? How much are they actually making? What SKUs are driving the business and what aren't? How much did they actually sell last year? So
Hmm.
as I come in, my first 30 days, I do a supply chain audit where I basically look at the
Hmm.
sales data, look how clean it is. I run a report. I do the inventory now. So as I start showing them these numbers, they start to understand, okay, like this is what's working and this is not. And then you have
Mm.
kind of like a framework to have that conversation where it's like you have 10 SKUs, you're buying all this inventory. That's great. But these three SKUs, they're not moving. These ones are. So you could spend $1 million on inventory, but instead of spending it evenly across all your SKUs, let's, place the bet on these two SKUs, which are really moving. And these ones are just kind
Yeah.
of like sticking up your cash. And so
Yeah.
that's really where I start is just actually putting together the data and having, part of my job is to understand the person's business so that when I come, even as a consultant or a fractional operator, I have a seat at the table. And when I say something, they trust me. So I need to look into the
Yeah.
data and understand their business well enough where I can actually like come to them and present something. And that trust is
Yeah.
kind of like where I have to build the framework. And it's like, here's where your
Okay.
business hit. Let me show you. And now based on that, if you understand, if you see what I see, it makes it a lot easier to
Yeah.
kind of, like what's working and what's not.